Welcome to Upway Farms, home of the Morgan horse. Today we're joined by Senator Dick McCormack.
Hi, Arthur.
And so I was wondering if you could just tell us a little about how you made your leap into politics since working at the country school, and if you're still doing music, and
Okay.
did your time here inform your transition into that field, or?
Well, certainly my years at the country school were a part of my life that it was very short. I was only here for 2 years, and I went into some very big changes shortly afterwards. And I think for part of my narrative for many years was that the country school was sort of a little side trip. But looking back, in more recent years, I've realized in particular, there are students who I think about all the time, and wonder how this one or that one is doing. And I also worry because we weren't exactly disciplinarians. And I think, my God, we just sent these little lambs out into the world. I hope they did okay. And I'm always delighted at how well former students are doing. Although I think it's the ones who are doing well who get in touch with their old teachers. The ones who have totally, blown it tend to stay away. But and it's interesting. Of everything I tried to teach, I think my folk song course is the one that people remember. And, Jeff Noyes, I don't know if you remember him. He's got his PhD. He's over in Germany now, at least last I knew. And he sent me these CDs of field recordings that he had gotten of chain gangs and stuff made in the 30s. They're just wonderful. So and of course I still live in the area, so I come by here all the time. My wife's mother lives in North Springfield, and we live in Bethel, so this is the prettiest way between the places.
Did your Vermont history courses, did those have anything to do with your transition into politics? Did you already have your heart set in that direction while you were teaching here?
Yeah, history was my love all along, and U.S. history and U.S. government. More the theory, the philosophy, than the actual practice. And that's the way I teach. I'm still teaching history. I teach in the state college system now, and I teach government. And people are often very disillusioned because you've got these wonderful theories, and then you've got the reality of slavery and the genocide on the Native Americans, and somewhat heavy-handed foreign policy over the years, and labor exploitation of labor. I mean, you could go on and on of what's wrong with America, and people are often very disillusioned about that. And my answer, and then the more conservative, politically conservative, patriotic answer is, you shouldn't say that because we're a great country and you're talking down our great country. My view is that America is a country that's always been sort of at odds with itself and hasn't really decided what it is after 200 years. And that goes right down to the individual level. That Thomas Jefferson could write the Declaration of Independence and yet buy and sell human beings. The contradictions get right into individuals. And I think our country's history and our country's governmental issues today can very easily be characterized as the struggle between the ideal and the real. Here's the principle, here's what we believe in the abstract, here's what it's supposed to be, and here's what it actually is. And I'm looking at horses, and I'm looking at someone looking at us. Should we be moving? I wonder.
Are they looking at us?
I guess not. I guess we're okay. They would have asked us to move. Yeah. So that is a kind of a mindset I've had all my life. Is what do you do about being an American? How do you reconcile what you're seeing? It's an old joke, actually, during the last days of communism, and where a peasant goes into the hospital and says, "I'd like to talk to your eye and ear specialist." And the nurse says, "Well, we have an eye specialist and we have an ear specialist. We don't actually have an eye and ear spaces. Well, I have an eye and ear problem. What I'm seeing is not what I'm hearing. And I think that's something that Americans face, is if you really believe, as I do, in our abstract principles as stated in our founding and defining documents, then you got to be troubled by what's out there. And I think if you look at, say, Martin Luther King or Susan B. Anthony, they fall back on the founding defining principles for their very progressive arguments. Neither of them said, Anthony fighting for women's rights and King for African Americans. Neither of them said, we reject America because it's bad. They said, we embrace America as it describes itself. And what we would like is for it to clean up its act and start being what it pretends to be. And so that's sort of the way I taught history at the country school. It's the way I teach it now. It's the way I teach government now. And so with that kind of an attitude, I've always been politically active and politically interested. And when I left the country school, I went back into making my living in music, which is what I had done before teaching. And sort of at war with myself. What do I want to be? Do I want to be a folk singer, a rock and roll singer, a writer, a teacher, a politician? My friends say I'm a Renaissance man. I fear that what that really means is someone who has never decided what he wants to be when he grows up. But I went back into music, did some radio work with Bill Boardman, a country school alumnus. Some satirics of freelance writing. Ended up with my own radio show as well for several years. And it was largely Ronald Reagan, I guess, that I was just so alarmed at Reagan that I thought, I'm going to really have to do something about this. And Vermont being Vermont, I lived in Bethel. I went to the town Democratic chair. And I had never been thrilled with the Democrats. I found them lukewarm at best, and I was never excited about the Democrats. But with Reagan in there, I thought, there are two parties, and if you want to do something about Reagan, you got to join the other party. And so I go to the Bethel Town Democratic chair, and I said, I'd like to sign up to help the Democrats. And he said, what are you talking to me for? I said, well, you're the town chair, aren't you? And he said, oh yeah, that's right, I guess I am. Said my father had been chair for 40 years. We had the annual caucus. He didn't want to do it anymore, so they elected me. I said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm not doing anything. I said, well, I'd like to help out. And he said, well, you want to be acting chair? I said, sure. My prior to that, I was on the Bethel, Vermont Council on the Arts. Which, if you know Bethel, it's a funny sound, because I played guitar. And they had a new town green that was very controversial. A lot of people thought there shouldn't be a town green. And as it turned out, nobody used the new town green. So to get a use of it, they appointed the Bethel Council on the Arts. And other than that, I had never done anything political. But suddenly, I was one of the co-chairs of the Nuclear Freeze movement Bethel committee. Okay, and we did that town by town. And so I showed up.
What period of time was
this?
This
is the 80s. This is about 83 maybe.
So it was shortly after the country school.
Shortly after the country school closed. I left
when that
in 80.
anti-nuke movement was still relatively in full swing.
Yeah, yeah. The freeze movement was, I think, 82, 83.
Yeah. And
so I went to the next meeting of the Bethel Nuclear Freeze Committee, and I said, we're changing our name. We are from now on the Bethel Town Democratic Committee. Because by default, we got it. And there were the usual 3 or 4 Democrats who would show up every year, so that there was at least officially a Democratic presence in the town. But I literally became town chair by being willing to do it. And then I brought my own committee in with